I know you're still brave enough to hear me tell the chilling truths of Hollywood. I've stayed silent for too long. 30 years. Since the day I met her. The woman the world calls the luckiest woman alive. But I call the reason I forgot who I was. I'm Pierce Brosnan.
Determination.
All the sacrifice you're making for us.
And to the families.
I used to be James Bond, the man no one could defeat. But there was one place where I fell, not on the battlefield, but in my own home. Have you ever lain next to the person you love and still felt completely alone? Have you ever smiled for the whole world to see, while your heart was breaking so badly you could barely breathe? Have you ever been looked at by the person who once said, "You're everything to me," only to realize all you see in their eyes now is doubt? They say I had it all. Fame, fortune, a beautiful wife. But they don't know that behind my smile were endless nights of silence. Behind the sparkling wedding ring was a wound that never healed. And today, at 72, I no longer want to hide. I don't want to play the hero anymore. I'm going to tell you the truth Hollywood has never heard. And that truth might just make you see your own love in a completely different light.
Right. There's two ways we can deal with this one.
I met Keely in April 1994 during an interview in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I was 41 at the time, a widower, having just wrapped filming GoldenEye, my first appearance as James Bond. The world saw me as an immortal hero, the man who could charm any woman. But every night, I'd wake up in the middle of my sleep. I just need you to be Pierce. That line shook me, because no one had ever said that to me before. All of Hollywood saw me as a symbol, a product. But she saw the man behind the tuxedo. We began dating publicly in late 1995. People magazine published a photo of us holding hands on Malibu Beach with the headline, Pierce Brosnan finds love again. I remember telling the reporter, "Keely is the woman who made me believe that happiness doesn't die with time." Everyone thought it was just a romantic line, but really it was a cry for help from a man who had just found shelter. Keely didn't come into my life like a storm. She came like someone rebuilding the house after the storm had passed. We moved in together in 1997 in Malibu. Every morning, she'd get up early, make coffee, tend the garden, while I read scripts. Sometimes I'd look out into the yard and see her laughing in the sunlight, and I'd think, this is peace. But peace always comes at a price. Keely started paying attention to every detail of my life. What I wore, what I said, who I met. At first it felt comforting. After so many years of being alone, having someone care was a blessing. But slowly I began to realize I was living under too much care. When she asked me, "Are you really going to do the kissing scene?" I laughed and said, "Are you jealous?" She replied, "No, I just want to know where your boundaries are." I didn't fully understand what she meant, until much later. In July 1998, we welcomed our first child, Dylan Thomas Brosnan. I held my son for the first time in the hospital room, and Keely cried. I had never seen her so vulnerable, but that joy was also the beginning of our first cracks. When Dylan was born, Keely devoted all her time to him, and I started to feel like I no longer belonged. I tried to fill that emptiness with work, took on The World Is Not Enough, traveled, promoted, did photo shoots, and Keely, once my partner, began to feel more like a guard. Where are you going? With whom? Is someone with you? The questions repeated over and over. In 1999, while I was filming in Turkey, I received an email from her. Don't forget that without Keely, there is no Pierce. I read that line again and again, unsure whether I should be afraid or feel sorry. Maybe she didn't mean to control me. Maybe she was just afraid of losing me, the way I had once lost Cassandra. But love born out of fear is no longer love. It's a chain. And I, the man who played a spy breaking out of any prison, couldn't escape the walls of my own home. In the fall of 2000, I proposed to Keely in Ireland, my birthplace. She nodded, tears falling, and I held her, believing that happiness had finally come full circle. I didn't know that on that very night, fate had just closed the final peaceful chapter of my life. We married in August 2001 in an ancient castle in County Mayo. Candlelight, Irish music, hundreds of guests. I looked at Keely in her white dress, eyes glowing, and I told myself, this is the woman I will love until my last breath. But when the fireworks lit up the sky, I caught her looking at me differently. Not with the gentleness of our early days, but with a mix of worry and possession. I couldn't explain it clearly, but in that moment, I knew. The woman I loved would never let me go anywhere alone again. After the wedding night, I stepped out onto the balcony to feel the breeze. The sea was dark, the sky beginning to lighten. I heard the door open behind me, and Keely came out, wrapped her arms around my waist and whispered, "You don't need to look far anymore, Pierce. Everything you need is right here." That whisper should have been sweet, but somehow it made my chest tighten. Maybe deep down, I knew that when someone says, "You don't need to look far anymore," it also means they've locked the door behind you. And so, 2001 came to a close, with fireworks, laughter, and a hairline crack in a love that once seemed perfect. I didn't see it then. But 10 years later, that crack would split wide open and swallow everything. Love, honor, and the image of a man who once seemed unbreakable. They say those who've lost love know how to cherish it more, but no one says that it's the fear of losing it that can make you lose everything. In 2002, I was filming Die Another Day in Iceland, my final Bond movie. The whole world admired me while Keely, she was at home, taking care of the kids, managing every meal. Every night I'd call and say, "I'm okay." And she would always ask the same question. "Is anyone with you?" I'd laugh to reassure her, but inside I started feeling worn down. Our relationship felt like a rubber band. The farther it stretched, the harder it snapped back. I loved Keely, but that love was slowly turning into obligation. When I came home, she'd ask about every detail of my day, what I ate, who I talked to, who I looked at the longest. I used to think it was care, but gradually I realized I was being interrogated. Not by the police, but by the woman I once called my light. In 2003, we moved to Kauai, Hawaii, searching for a peaceful retreat. I remember the day we arrived, ocean wind in her hair, and she said, "Now no one can take you from me anymore." I smiled, kissed her, never imagining that those words were a warning. In Hawaii, she was with me, at all times, everywhere. When I read scripts, she sat across from me, pretending to read. When I left the house, she asked where I was going. When I came back, she asked why I was late. I had played spies who were constantly watched, but I'd never felt it so vividly in real life. I told her, "Keely, I need space to breathe." She replied without blinking, "Space? I am your space." It sounded poetic, but in the middle of the night, it felt more like a curse. In 2004, I stepped away from the role of James Bond. The studio wanted to reboot the character with someone younger, and Daniel Craig was chosen. The world mourned, but Keely smiled and said, "Now you don't have to kiss anyone but me." I looked at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. I had just lost the biggest role of my life. But what truly choked me up was the relief in her eyes, as if she had finally won. No more Bond girls around me. No more film sets. No more outside world. Just me, her, and four walls. In the years that followed, I tried to return with smaller projects. The Matador, Evelyn, After the Sunset. Each film carried a piece of me. The fatigue, the inner conflict, the eyes of a man who was no longer free. Keely came with me to every set, saying it was to stay close. She took behind-the-scenes photos, wrote articles, published stories about 10 years of lasting love. Everyone praised her as the perfect wife. And me? I just felt myself growing smaller and smaller. I didn't know who I was anymore, except for being her husband. One evening in June 2006, I was reading the script for Seraphim Falls when Keely walked in and threw a tabloid on the table. The front page showed a photo of me with my co-star Julianne Moore. The headline read, "Pierce caught in another Bond girl romance." I laughed and said, "That's a promo shot." But she didn't believe me. "You never stop, do you?" Her voice trembled, then burst into a scream. I stood up and said, "Keely, stop. Don't turn this into a disaster." She lunged at me, hitting my chest, crying, yelling, "I'm just scared of losing you, Pierce." I didn't move. I didn't push back. Because in that moment, I didn't see a jealous woman. I saw someone desperate. And at the same time, I realized, no love can survive if one person is constantly afraid of losing the other. After that night, she apologized, held me, said she was too sensitive. I apologized too, for being distant. We made peace. But some cracks don't make a sound, and it's those silent ones that break the heart. I started going to the beach more, alone. Once I sat watching the sunset and thought, whose life am I living right now? In 2007, my mother passed away in Ireland. I flew back for the funeral, just for 2 days. Keely didn't come. She said, "You don't need to look back. You have the present, and that's me." I nodded. But that night, standing by the grave, I whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry. I live in a house that feels like a prison." I felt like a traitor to the wife I lost, to the wife who loved me now, and to myself. When I returned, Keely was waiting at the door. She hugged me and softly asked, "Did you cry?" I said, "No." She smiled, "Good. I don't want to see you weak." I understood she wanted me to be strong, but that strength had turned into a mask. Every day I put it on the moment I stepped out of the bedroom. By 2008, everything began to collapse from the inside. I was preparing for Mamma Mia, a light, joyful film full of music. But inside me was a sadness heavy as stone. I saw Keely smiling on the red carpet, holding my hand tightly, telling the press, "We're happier than ever." And I smiled for the cameras, then turned away to wipe my sweat. When people applauded, I caught her looking at me, as if silently asking, "Are you acting, or are you really living?" I didn't answer, because I honestly didn't know. One night in London, while filming Mamma Mia, I got a call at 2 a.m. It was Keely. Her voice was cold as steel. "Where are you? Who's with you?" I said, "Keely, I'm at the hotel. I just finished filming." She said, "I saw pictures of you with Meryl Streep. You were smiling at her." I paused for a few seconds, then said, "Keely, she's my co-star. It's work." She started crying. I hung up. For the first time in 15 years, I ended a call with her. And I knew that from that moment, we were no longer husband and wife. We were two people trapping each other in the same house. In the months that followed, I realized my fear had shifted. I used to fear losing Keely. Now, I feared losing myself. I looked in the mirror and saw a 55-year-old man with graying hair and tired eyes. James Bond was gone. All that was left was Pierce Brosnan, a man who had once saved the world on screen but couldn't save his own marriage. One morning, as I was getting ready for a magazine photo shoot at the beach, Keely said, "Don't let them see me old." I stopped and asked, "What do you mean?" She replied, "If they see I'm no longer perfect, they'll say you can find someone else." I turned around, looked at her, and realized the woman who once saved me was now slowly dying inside from fear. I walked over, held her hand, and said, "Keely, I've never wanted anyone else." She smiled, but tears fell. I knew then, words can't heal the wounds left by insecurity. That night, as I lay down, she whispered, "Promise you won't leave me, Pierce." I said, "I promise." But deep down, I knew that promise couldn't save anyone. Because when love turns into fear, it burns itself alive. Can you relate to me? That some prisons don't need bars, just two people who love each other a little too much? In 2009, when The Ghostwriter premiered, I returned to the screen to critical acclaim. The media called me Pierce Brosnan 2.0, more mature, more thoughtful, seemingly happier. But what they didn't know was that behind the smile on the red carpet, I was living in a house colder than any film set I'd ever been on. In Hawaii, where the sun is warm and the breeze is soft, our villa had grown hauntingly quiet. Keely spoke less, I spoke less. We merely existed, Two people breathing, but no longer sharing breath. She stayed in her office. I stayed in my study. We avoided eye contact because every look brought back memories, arguments, tears, silence, and then apologies. One morning in March, I woke up and looked to the side. The bed was empty. I stepped out onto the balcony and saw Keely doing yoga, her figure tilted gently in the sunlight. She looked peaceful, but her face was blank. And it hit me. When peace comes from avoiding each other, love is already beginning to die. I went downstairs and made coffee. She said, "You don't have to wait for me anymore, Pierce. I'll have breakfast later." Her voice was light, but that sentence echoed in my mind all day. In 2010, Keely began to change physically. She gained weight, then lost it, then gained again. The tabloids were brutal, sharp as scalpels. They ran cruel headlines. James Bond's wife loses her spark. Pierce Brosnan and his wife, no longer a Hollywood match. I saw the paparazzi shots, read the mocking comments under every article, and my heart sank. She didn't read them, but I knew she knew. One day I found her sitting in front of the mirror, eyes red, a Star magazine on the table. She asked, "Are you ashamed of me?" I quietly replied, "Never." She looked at me for a long time, then said, "I am." That day I understood. Her pain didn't come from me, but from a world that now saw her as Bond's aging wife. We drifted apart, not through fights, but through silence. I was busy with films and promotions. She stayed home, raised the kids, took care of the house, and nurtured a growing fear that I would leave her, like so many Hollywood men before. I never did. But sometimes you don't need betrayal to lose someone. All it takes is too much silence. In June 2012, I came home after a long shoot in New York. When I opened the door, I heard piano music in the living room. Keely was playing Moon River, the song she used to play for me when we first lived in Malibu. I stood behind her, listened until the last note, then clapped. She turned around and gave a faint smile. "I was just playing to see if I could still feel anything," she said. I asked, "And did you?" She replied, "I didn't feel a thing." I had no words. A woman who once cried out of love now saying she felt nothing. That's the cruelest sign that love has died. In 2013, I lost my daughter, Charlotte, Cassandra's child, to ovarian cancer, the same disease that took her mother. When I got the news, I collapsed. Keely flew to London with me, but didn't say a word the entire flight. I thought I could lean on her, but at the gravesite she stepped back. Not out of fear, but because she didn't know what to do. That night back at the hotel, I cried, for the first time in years. She sat beside me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "You have to be strong, Pierce." I smiled through tears. "I don't want to be strong anymore," she said, "because if you fall, I'll fall too." I looked at her and realized we weren't in love anymore. We were just two people afraid of breaking each other. After the funeral, we returned to Hawaii. I spoke less. She buried herself in religion. She read the Bible, listened to meditation music, told me, "Everything happens for a reason." I wanted to believe. But every time I heard the wind chimes outside the porch, all I could think of was Charlotte's voice calling. I became more distant from Keely than ever. Every meal became a performance. She'd ask, I'd answer, and we both forced smiles. Some nights I'd leave in the middle of dinner and walk down to the beach alone. The waves crashed against the rocks. The wind howled in my ears, and in my head, I heard a question I didn't dare say aloud. If I weren't Pierce Brosnan, would Keely still be here? By 2014, everything had hit rock bottom. The media went after her appearance again. This time, more viciously. Bond's wife ballooned again. That headline was plastered across the front page of the Daily Mail. I was furious, ready to sue, but Keely said, "Don't bother. They're only saying what you're already thinking." I shouted, "You think I'm judging you too?" She screamed back, "You don't have to say it. I see it in your eyes every time you look at old photos of me." The house went silent. I stood there looking at her, eyes red, hair messy, and I realized we weren't fighting for love anymore. We were just protecting the image of love the world still believed in. In February 2015, I was invited to the Oscars as an honorary guest. Keely came with me. She wore a navy blue gown, smiled for the press, held my hand tight. As the flashbulbs fired away, she whispered, "They still think we're perfect." I whispered back, "Maybe because they don't hear what happens behind the door." She turned to me with a half smile, "And they never will." That night, after the party, we returned to our hotel in Beverly Hills. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the glowing city, while she sat in the dark, taking off her earrings, muttering softly, "I'm tired, Pierce." I asked, "Because of me?" She said, "Because I'm tired of pretending I still love you like I did in the beginning." The words were light as breath, but they hit me like a brick. I walked over, sat beside her, and said, "You don't have to pretend anymore." She turned to me, tears falling. "But if we stop pretending, what do we have left?" We sat in silence. For the first time, that silence held no anger, no tears, only truth. We had gone too far to turn back, and were too tired to leave. I remember one morning, a few weeks later, Keely was making breakfast when she suddenly stopped and said, without looking at me, "Pierce, if you woke up tomorrow and I was gone, would you be happier?" I answered, "I don't know." She gave a sad smile. "I do." After that, she started traveling alone, to Paris, to India, to Greece. Every time she left, I felt relief and guilt. I'd call, and she'd respond with short messages. "I'm fine." Each message was a new layer of distance. I knew we weren't living together anymore. We were just coexisting in memory. And then, at the end of 2015, when I received a Lifetime Achievement Award in London, I stood on stage and looked out at the audience, at the empty seat beside my son. Keely wasn't there. In that moment, I understood that our marriage was over. No one had said it, but neither of us had the strength to pretend anymore. That night, I returned to the hotel and found a letter on the table. Her handwriting. Just one line. "You once said you weren't afraid of anything. But love, Pierce, that's the scariest thing of all." I read it over and over. Then I looked up at the mirror. James Bond was still there, only now. His eyes knew fear. It's not betrayal that kills a marriage. It's when two people start speaking through glances, and those glances no longer hold love. In 2016, I lived alone in Malibu. The house was big and quiet, filled only with the sound of waves and the smell of sea salt. Keely wasn't there anymore. She had moved back in with her mother in Los Angeles, saying, "We need space." I didn't argue. After everything, maybe distance was the only thing keeping us from hating each other. At first, I still called, still sent pictures, still said goodnight. But over time, the calls became fewer, the messages shorter. I realized that distance doesn't come from geography. It comes from two hearts no longer beating in sync. While filming The Foreigner with Jackie Chan in 2017, I had a long scene in London. During a break, Jackie looked at my hand and asked, "You still wear your wedding ring?" I glanced down. The ring was still there, worn and old. I said, "I keep it because it reminds me I was once loved." Jackie gave a sad smile. "Or maybe it reminds you that you lost it." That line followed me the whole flight home. When I got back, I opened the closet and stared at dozens of photos of Keely and me, smiling brightly. Those smiles now looked like they belonged to two souls who had once been happy in another lifetime. Then, in 2018, I got word that Keely had been hospitalized from exhaustion. She was working on an environmental documentary when she collapsed. I canceled everything and flew to the hospital. When I walked in, she was lying there, thinner, but with that same light in her eyes. She whispered, "You still came." I held her hand. I never left. For the first time in years, there were no arguments, no pretending, no audience. Just two people who had been through hell, seeing each other as if we'd never left. She gripped my hand tightly, and I understood. No matter how broken the world outside was, there was still a fragile thread of empathy between us. After that, Keely moved back to the house in Kauai. But it wasn't the same. She no longer needed to prove anything. I no longer had to be James Bond in real life. We spoke more gently, listened more. One day I asked, "Do you still love me?" She smiled. "Not like before, but maybe I care about you more than ever." I didn't respond, because sometimes caring carries more weight than loving. In 2019, I began painting. Every morning I'd sit on the porch, brush in hand, painting the sea, the clouds, the distant mountains. Keely would often stand behind me, watching silently. She once said, "You know, when we first got married, I couldn't imagine you ever sitting still." I replied, "Back then, I didn't know what stillness was." She nodded. "You do now, don't you?" I smiled. Maybe true peace isn't the absence of waves, it's knowing they'll come and not being afraid anymore. In 2020, the pandemic hit. The whole world panicked, but in our little house in Hawaii, we felt closer than we had in years. No reporters, no film sets, no red carpets. Just two people, cooking, reading, listening to the rain. One night, as the world was counting cases, Keely lit candles and said, "Maybe God is giving us a chance to start over." I looked at her, her face no longer young but her eyes still warm. I said, "I don't think we ever really ended." In 2016, I lived alone in Malibu. The house was big and quiet, filled only with the sound of waves and the smell of sea salt. Keely wasn't there anymore. She had moved back in with her mother in Los Angeles, saying, "We need space." I didn't argue. After everything, maybe distance was the only thing keeping us from hating each other. At first, I still called, still sent pictures, still said goodnight. But over time, the calls became fewer, the messages shorter. I realized that distance doesn't come from geography. It comes from two hearts no longer beating in sync. While filming The Foreigner with Jackie Chan in 2017, I had a long scene in London. During a break, Jackie looked at my hand and asked, "You still wear your wedding ring?" I glanced down. The ring was still there, worn and old. I said, "I keep it because it reminds me I was once loved." Jackie gave a sad smile. "Or maybe it reminds you that you lost it." That line followed me the whole flight home. When I got back, I opened the closet and stared at dozens of photos of Keely and me, smiling brightly. Those smiles now looked like they belonged to two souls who had once been happy in another lifetime. Then, in 2018, I got word that Keely had been hospitalized from exhaustion. She was working on an environmental documentary when she collapsed. I canceled everything and flew to the hospital. When I walked in, she was lying there thinner, but with that same light in her eyes. She whispered, "You still came." I held her hand. I never left. For the first time in years, there were no arguments, no pretending, no audience. Just two people who had been through hell, seeing each other as if we'd never left. She gripped my hand tightly, and I understood. No matter how broken the world outside was, there was still a fragile thread of empathy between us. After that, Keely moved back to the house in Kauai. But it wasn't the same. She no longer needed to prove anything. I no longer had to be James Bond in real life. We spoke more gently, listened more. One day I asked, "Do you still love me?" She smiled. "Not like before, but maybe I care about you more than ever." I didn't respond, because sometimes caring carries more weight than loving. In 2019, I began painting. Every morning I'd sit on the porch, brush in hand, painting the sea, the clouds, the distant mountains. Keely would often stand behind me, watching silently. She once said, "You know, when we first got married, I couldn't imagine you ever sitting still." I replied, "Back then, I didn't know what stillness was." She nodded. "You do now, don't you?" I smiled. Maybe true peace isn't the absence of waves. It's knowing they'll come and not being afraid anymore. In 2020, the pandemic hit. The whole world panicked. But in our little house in Hawaii, we felt closer than we had in years. No reporters, no film sets, no red carpets, just two people, cooking, reading, listening to the rain. One night, as the world was counting cases, Keely lit candles and said, "Maybe God is giving us a chance to start over." I looked at her, her face no longer young, but her eyes still warm. I said, "I don't think we ever really ended." In 2021, we marked our 20th wedding anniversary. The press was stunned to see us appear together in Malibu. They asked, "What's the secret to keeping love alive?" I smiled and replied, "We didn't keep it, we just didn't let go." They laughed at the answer, but in my heart, it was the truth. We didn't hold on through passion, but through memory. The memory of all the times we almost lost each other. There's one moment I'll never forget. An afternoon in October 2022. We were walking along Poipu Beach, the same place where we once took our wedding photos. The breeze was soft, the waves gentle, the sunlight golden. Keely stopped and asked, "Do you ever regret it, Pierce?" I said, "Regret what?" She looked out at the horizon. "Loving me." I smiled. "No. I only regret not being strong enough to love you the right way." She turned, gently touched my hand, and said, "Me too." In that moment, I understood we had come full circle in our marriage, from love to pain to breaking, and then back to peace. Not returning to where we started, but arriving somewhere new. A place called gratitude. Now at 70, I no longer do action films. I spend more time at home, planting, painting, reading. Keely still moves between Hawaii and California, caring for her environmental organization. On days when she's gone, I still leave her chair empty at the dining table, not out of hope, but out of respect for that space. Love, after all, is learning how to let someone go far and still know they can find their way back. In the spring of 2023, Keely hosted a photo exhibition in Los Angeles called Ocean Hearts, a project about women and the ocean. I went, quietly standing in the back. When she stepped on stage, she saw me. That look in her eyes, it was still the same as in 1994. She told the audience, "I once believed love was a flame that never goes out. Now I know. It goes out many times. But some people are brave enough to light it again." The whole room applauded. So did I. That night, she sent me a message. "Thank you for still being there, in whatever form that may be." I read it and smiled. I knew that between us, there were no more ties. But something remained, something even more fragile than marriage: forgiveness. Now, at 72, as I sit writing this, I'm not talking about tragedy, but about what remains after it. Keely is still a part of my life, not as my wife, but as my witness. We walked together through the brightest and darkest years, and we watched each other grow, from love to compassion. People ask me, if you could do it all over again, would you still marry her? I usually stay silent, but today I have an answer. Yes, I would still marry her. Because if not for Keely, I would have never learned that true love isn't about keeping someone next to you. It's about keeping your heart intact through the storm. Love doesn't die. It just changes form, from roaring flames to glowing embers. And only those who've been burned know it's that warmth that keeps us alive. It took me many years to understand this, that no one caused the breakdown of my marriage. Not Keely, not the media, not Hollywood. It was me. It was my silence. People say a man is strong when he endures, when he keeps his pain to himself. But that is the most dangerous lie I ever believed. I thought I was protecting her from the weaker parts of me. But in truth, I was building a wall she could never climb. Whenever Keely asked, "Are you okay?" I always said, "I'm fine." And that answer, repeated thousands of times, became the blade that severed the bond between us. I remember one morning in 2021, just before our 20th anniversary, Keely asked me, "If you could live it all over again, would you do anything differently?" I was silent for a long time. Then I said, "I'd talk to you more." She looked surprised. "About what?" I said, "About my fears, my loneliness, and how sometimes I felt I wasn't enough for you." She gave a sad smile. "If you had told me sooner, maybe things would have been different." And that was the moment I realized. People don't leave because they stop loving. They leave because they stop feeling heard. For years, I believed I was the one who had been hurt. But now, looking back, I see it was Keely who carried the heavier burden. She lived beside a man haunted by the past. A man who tried so hard to be a good husband, a good father, but never dared to show her his broken pieces. I made her believe that to be loved, she had to be strong, had to be perfect, had to be jealous, had to hold on. And I ruined the image of love she once believed in. Hollywood only sees the surface, the wedding photos, the smiles, the headlines that say unbreakable love. No one sees the two souls who touched and then drifted apart. When I said I love you in interviews, I wasn't lying. But I said it like a role, not like a plea. I never stopped to ask, "And you? Are you okay?" And when she started to change, when she gained weight, when she stopped smiling, I thought it was time catching up. But it wasn't. It was the result of living inside a love that hadn't been nurtured in years. I watched an old interview from 2004. They asked, "What makes your marriage work?" I answered, "We respect each other's freedom." I laughed when I saw it again. Because for years, I didn't respect her freedom. I was just afraid. So afraid of losing her that I tried to control her. And I didn't see that fear was turning me into the worst version of myself. I remember the last time we fought, in 2015. I said things I could never take back. She stood in the middle of the room, looked at me, and quietly said, "Pierce, do you know what hurts the most? It's that I've spent my whole life loving a man who always thought he was alone." That sentence cut through me. 7 years later, I still hear it every time I wake up in the middle of the night. Someone once asked me, "Pierce, do you believe in destiny?" I think I do. But destiny isn't just about two people meeting. It's about two people teaching each other the lessons they were meant to learn. Keely taught me that love isn't about holding on. It's about understanding. And I taught her that even the strongest people can fall when they forget how to be heard. That lesson, unfortunately, came too late. Now I live by the sea, with a few paintings, a few books, and some old photographs. Every morning, I watch the sun rise and remember the woman who taught me what it means to love and what it means to lose. There isn't a night that goes by that I don't think of her, but I no longer feel regret. Because I know, even though we're no longer together, I carry a piece of her soul in every breath I take. If someone out there is listening to me, I just want to say one thing. Don't wait until you've lost everything to learn how to speak the truth. Speak your fears. Speak your pain. Speak the things you keep saying. I'll tell them tomorrow. Because love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies from silence. And if you're asking me, do you still love her? The answer is yes. But that love is no longer a burning fire. It's a small candle just bright enough for me to see the path I've walked. Keely Shaye Smith. She is the most beautiful and most painful gift life ever gave me. And if there's one thing I want the world to know after everything, it's this. Sometimes, the people who hurt you the most are the same ones who saved you from yourself. I once was James Bond, the man who could save the world, but couldn't save the heart of the woman who believed in me. If you're in a relationship where you have to stay silent every day just to keep the peace, remember that peace may be slowly killing you. Speak up, even if your voice shakes, even if you're scared, because the truth doesn't destroy love. Silence does. And if you're still listening now, maybe your heart has been broken like mine. The only question left is, do you have the courage to say what you've never said before it's too late? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this video touched something in your heart, press 3. Because sometimes, one honest story is all it takes to save a soul.